versus Floyd in a boxing match. One is broken, one is broke. Does it work? All right, let me spin this. Let me admit that this is political speak and that I'm doing a spin.
Let's actually make the case for it. Right away, the noise gets stripped out of the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather storyline, and everything gets reframed around a single blunt contrast. Broken versus broke. It plays like a catchy tagline, but there's more underneath the wordplay, because it pushes us to take a fresh look at where McGregor's career genuinely stands. By admitting up front that there's spin involved in the framing, the invitation is to rethink how fighting sports actually define winning, losing, success, and fading away. McGregor took another loss, sure, but was it truly the final word so many people rushed to declare it as?
For anyone that was cheering against Conor or cheering for Conor's demise, before you take a victory lap, he didn't get beat up. He didn't get submitted, he didn't get knocked out.
The typical narrative around McGregor's most recent defeat gets picked apart piece by piece here. He lost, yes, but he never handed his fiercest doubters the brutal, undeniable finish they were hoping to celebrate. He wasn't knocked cold, and he wasn't choked into a submission so clean it silenced every argument. That's a bigger deal than semantics, because it means he can come back without dragging along the reputation of total physical collapse. His critics got their result, but did they actually get the satisfying ending they were craving?
So, I don't know that you Conor naysayers get to quite have your day in the sun just yet. I mean, it would seem, if this is it, this is the final run of McGregor, it would seem as though resolution wasn't met.
That missing sense of real closure for the people rooting against McGregor might be the most telling part of this whole conversation. A lot of people cheered his loss, but the point being made is that the definitive end of the McGregor era simply hasn't arrived yet. Without a clean, undeniable conclusion, his mystique keeps surviving, and neither his fans nor his haters can fully move on. The scoreboard result is only a slice of the picture, and digging past it reveals something messier. What actually drove the performance people watched that night?
This isn't the worst injury Conor's had. The worst injury Conor's had is the one that he just came back from. Ring rust is real. Going up to 170 pounds, I believe in hindsight was a mistake, not because he's not big enough or strong enough. It allows for a lack of discipline.
From there, the argument pivots, suggesting the broken leg wasn't necessarily the biggest hurdle McGregor faced. The real trouble might trace back to years spent out of action, and a questionable call to fight up in weight. Jumping to 170 pounds might have felt like a move built on power and ease, but it may have also fed habits that chipped away at his discipline. That's the crux of the debate hanging over his comeback. Is the underwhelming showing mostly about lingering physical damage, or did poor mental readiness carry more of the blame?
Making 155 pounds required an extra level of discipline. The weight class of 155 was a byproduct of a lifestyle. Aside from that, what do you want to do? And then he thought Conor was going to win anyway. Before you're excited about it, all that happened is exactly what the odds makers told us was going to happen.
This section drives home how tightly McGregor's success has always been tied to structure, sacrifice, and personal discipline. His sharpest form at 155 pounds came out of a brutally strict routine and a lifestyle built entirely around performance. Standards that always seemed to slip whenever he moved up in weight class. So the outcome here gets treated as something predictable rather than shocking. Too many things were stacked against him before the fight ever started. The real question is figuring out why those obstacles piled up so heavily.
He had to overcome three things that no human has overcome ever. Any one of the three had never been done. He was going to have to come back from a 6-year layoff into a 5-round proposition. It's never been done. He was going to have to return from a compound leg fracture, which has never been done, included by Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva, two of the best ever. And he was going to return to a weight class above his prime, even if you go back to the boxing world.
Look at the sport itself for a second. That's what puts the sheer size of this challenge into perspective. McGregor was trying to clear 3 massive hurdles that no fighter has ever cleared all at once. Coming back after roughly 6 years away, healing from a brutal compound leg fracture, and competing above the weight where he did his best work. Any single one of those factors could sink a comeback on its own. But stacking all 3 together made for a nearly impossible situation. Looked at through that lens, his performance starts to make a lot more sense. Was there really any fighter who could have thrived under conditions that harsh?
Though no threat has presented itself, he continues practicing. just in case an imaginary opponent appears near the sushi bar. A wise precaution. His hands have already been registered with the International Registry of Lethal Hands.
There's a vivid image used to sum up who McGregor is. A martial artist whose weapons never stop being honed, even when his conditioning or timing isn't all the way back. The danger in his hands is still there. That points to a competitive fire that doesn't just vanish during time off, along with the relentless work ethic that made him a worldwide star in the first place. The fighter in him may still be very much alive. What's unclear is whether that fire alone can outweigh the physical toll his body has taken.
Was he rusty? Yeah, I could see it. His timing was off, his balance was off, he had some nerves, a couple of jitters in there. Part of that represents the flying kick. Hey man, let's get this party started. Let's get this started right now, whether it goes for me or against me. At least we can check off the list of we've got a fight going.
McGregor's obvious nerves and shaky rhythm add a more human layer to this comeback story. That early flying kick shouldn't just be read as showmanship for the crowd. It might just as easily have been a jittery fighter trying to force the pace right away, whether or not it actually helped his position. His movement showed tension, off timing, and understandable rust after such a long layoff. Physical recovery on its own doesn't fix any of that. How many rounds or camps does it actually take before elite instincts start clicking again naturally?
That won't happen if he fights in a relatively short period of time, meaning any time this year. I will not be a supporter in the least of a fight in April.
There's a strong warning here against rushing McGregor into another boxing match too soon, especially one floated for April. A quick turnaround might scratch the itch of public curiosity, but it wouldn't leave enough room for the physical and mental prep a comeback like this demands. Recovery isn't just about the tissue healing. Confidence, reflexes, timing, and composure all need rebuilding too. So the right comeback hinges just as much on patience and timing as it does on picking the right opponent. Still, there may be one type of matchup that could shrink the importance of his damaged leg and open up a completely different path forward.
Floyd, he's got a leg injury. I'm a Greco-Roman guy. For you wrestling fans, you'll understand that. A lot of people that went into Greco-Roman at a very high level, Dave Zuniga comes to mind, is because freestyle was no longer an option. They had leg injuries. They had knee replacements.
Amid all the talk about ACL and MCL damage, an unexpected comparison gets pulled in. Greco-Roman wrestling. That discipline offers a useful blueprint for athletes dealing with serious lower body limitations, since so much of its offense comes from upper body control rather than constant deep knee bending. A fighter with compromised legs can still lean on positioning, grip strength, balance, and core power to stay effective. This example reshapes how McGregor's future gets evaluated. That same principle of working around an injury could carry over from wrestling into another major combat sport.
And you take that out in Greco for the most part when you go stand straight up, not to bend your knees. Boxing would be one of those examples. And we've seen this. We've seen Anderson Silva look awesome in boxing. Take that leg out of it completely.
That wrestling concept then gets tied straight to boxing, framed as a possible path forward for McGregor after his leg injury. Anderson Silva finding success in boxing after his own gruesome leg fracture is cited as proof the transition can work. Boxing wouldn't erase every issue tied to McGregor's leg, but it could cut down on the kicks, checks, and grappling scrambles that put extra strain on it. The physical reasoning holds up. The real open question is whether fans would still tune in to watch this different version of Conor McGregor compete.
Is there something there? And I'm not necessarily asking, do you want to see that? I know today that you don't. But 2 weeks from now, this is going to look and feel very different. I can remember 2 weeks ago when Ilia Topuria was being teased. And now 3 different massive fights opened up for Ilia Topuria, and everybody's saying his name and they can't wait to...
It's acknowledged that plenty of fans currently have zero interest in seeing McGregor step into a boxing ring. But the prediction is that opinions could flip fast, maybe in just a matter of weeks. Ilia Topuria's sudden surge in popularity is offered as proof of how quickly momentum and public opinion can turn in this sport. A single fight, announcement, call-out, or promotional twist can turn an idea that seemed pointless into the biggest story in the division. Fans rarely stay as consistent as they claim, and new openings keep popping up. What kind of moment would be big enough to push fans toward embracing such a drastic shift from McGregor? It just happened.
Back in there. If he's disciplined, if he's focused, if he proves that to us by going to 155 pounds, by example, is it enough to redo Max? No, it's probably not. There's probably not.
The first real question is whether McGregor's body can hold up to top-level competition again. A full return to MMA against someone like Max Holloway might ask more of him than he can deliver. But a few conditions are laid out that could at least make another run believable. Renewed discipline, complete focus, and getting back down to 155. This isn't a guarantee he can reclaim his old championship level, and it's careful not to lean on nostalgia as proof. His future in boxing, though, may hold the bigger opportunity, since the damaged leg would be less of a liability there than inside the cage.
Specifically in boxing, where that leg is no longer an issue. Yeah, I think so. I think we can have something there. Now, you would need a promoter that say, hey guys, you're going to work with us. We're not taking a $100 million risk. We're not even taking a $50 million risk.
The pitch gets more direct. Boxing is presented as a sensible landing spot for McGregor precisely because it shields his biggest physical weakness. Instead of defending kicks, wrestling, scrambling, or absorbing repeated strain on the repaired leg, the sport would let him lean entirely on the tools he trusts most. Even so, this idea needs a promoter willing to take a calculated risk. The old approach of locking in a massive guaranteed payday before the fight might not add up financially anymore. A workable deal would need to shield the promoter while still leaving enough upside to drive both fighters.
But we will host the event, and we will bring you in on it. Whether that's a distribution or a pay-per-view model, we will bring you in on it. You will eat what you kill. All right. And do they want to do it? Do those guys still have that competitive fire? For me, that would answer the question.
One unconventional pay structure could fix that problem. Each fighter gets paid based on what the event actually brings in. Rather than dumping nearly all the financial risk on the promoter through huge guaranteed purses, the fighters would take a real cut of the revenue their own popularity generates. Basically, they eat what they kill. That setup tests whether McGregor and Mayweather still have the drawing power tied to their names, while letting a major event happen without reckless upfront spending. Money can open the door, but it shouldn't be the only reason they come back.
I need to know that they're serious in front of everything else. Before I share my opinion and influence you guys and you influence me back in our comment section, before we do that, I need to know that these athletes are serious. First up, exhibition, no. Gotta put it on the line.
Before any real matchmaking or promotion gets underway, there's one condition that isn't up for debate. Both fighters need to show up with genuine intent to win. That standard cuts out the familiar routine of stage trash talk, followed by a low-stakes exhibition. A ceremonial appearance built purely to cash a check wouldn't be worth the hype or the investment. Both men need to train hard, put something real on the line, and genuinely want to beat one another. Once exhibitions are off the table, the remaining puzzle is finding a format that keeps things legitimate without putting either veteran at unnecessary risk.
Secondly, 10 rounds, I don't love it. One of the things that Jake Paul did that I liked the most was the 8-round fight. Conor versus Floyd. Could that happen? Could that be big? Broken versus broke. I think as far as ideas go, I think that's the best one.
So the blueprint for a believable rematch becomes pretty simple. No exhibition rules, real stakes, and possibly an 8-round format similar to what Jake Paul has used successfully. That kind of compromise could allow enough time for a real fight, while limiting the physical toll on two guys whose bodies have already taken years of damage. It might be the perfect setup for Mayweather and McGregor to finally close out the broken versus broke storyline that kicked all this off. This is framed as the strongest version of the idea, and that conclusion holds a bigger lesson. The real edge rarely comes from louder marketing, bold promises, or a quick fix. It comes from spotting the underlying principle that actually makes the whole plan work, then sticking with it. That's the line separating amateurs from professionals. Amateurs chase quick tricks. Professionals build systems they can repeat under pressure. Once that distinction clicks, the goal stops being about just keeping up with everyone else. It becomes about controlling the terms of the competition entirely. Most people say they're working hard, but effort without a real strategic shift usually just produces the same letdown over and over. Loud noise grabs attention because it's exciting and easy to talk about. The useful stuff is usually quiet. It's the pay structure, the weight class, the recovery timeline, the rule set, or the willingness to insist on a real fight instead of a hollow show. Zeroing in on that one decisive factor can completely change the outcome. Consistency is what makes that change stick, because the right idea only becomes powerful when it's applied again and again, not just admired once. Listen closely to what's actually being argued. McGregor's path forward isn't about pretending nothing has changed. It's about clearly seeing what has changed and building the comeback around that new reality. That's how untapped potential gets unlocked. Most people miss this because they want a dramatic answer, but the real answer is usually the practical one. Success isn't some mystery. It's hard because it demands honest self-assessment, disciplined execution, and the patience to turn down emotionally tempting choices that don't actually serve the bigger goal. Excuses can't fix the leg, bring back the lost years, or restore lost timing. Only deliberate action can do that. The gap between the best performers and everyone else isn't always about effort. Often it's about where that effort gets aimed. Smart work blends preparation with judgment. It stays locked in on the details that decide whether the bigger plan survives. That's why this proposal can't just be about whether McGregor fights again. The opponent, the format, the timing, the weight, the seriousness, and the financial terms all matter. Overlook even one of them, and the whole opportunity could collapse before the first bell. When these ideas get brushed aside, fighters and promoters stay stuck in the same failed patterns. Once those assumptions get challenged, the whole landscape can shift fast. That shift might look small from outside, but its ripple effect is huge because it changes how every later decision gets made. Plenty of careers have been wrecked by refusing to accept this. Fighters chase the biggest available payday before their bodies are ready. Promoters hand out enormous guarantees based on old popularity instead of current demand. Fans push for the flashiest matchup instead of the smartest one. Every one of those choices sounds bold right up until the consequences hit. The real shift has to happen mentally before it shows up physically or financially. Stop trying to rebuild the exact conditions of McGregor's prime and start designing around the fighter who actually exists today. He's older. His leg has been surgically repaired. His activity level has dropped, and his relationship with discipline has come into question. None of that automatically means he's finished. It just means the next plan can't be a copy of the last one. Real growth is uncomfortable because it means giving up the fantasy that the old playbook will keep working forever. Anyone unwilling to sit with that discomfort stays stuck, endlessly hunting for a magic fix that requires no sacrifice. And that pattern shows up constantly. Once that idea really sinks in, every piece of the comeback looks different. Rushing back stops seeming brave and starts looking reckless. Fighting at 170 stops looking convenient and starts looking strategically shaky. Taking another top-tier MMA fight stops feeling like the obvious move and becomes just one path among several. Boxing being another, what first looks like a step back from the sport that made McGregor famous, can instead be read as a smart adjustment to his physical reality. That shift in perspective is simple, but the commercial and competitive fallout from it could be huge. The top tier of any field is filled with people who spot these details before everyone else catches on. They don't just rely on effort. They point that effort at the leverage point capable of actually changing the outcome. Here, that leverage point might be an 8-round professional boxing rematch funded through revenue sharing, instead of massive guarantees. A setup like that wouldn't magically turn back the clock on McGregor, but it would cut down on unnecessary risk, reward genuine fan interest, and force both men to prove their seriousness matches their talk. The underlying principle matters more than the catchphrase. Fighters who chase shortcuts eventually run into opponents, injuries, or circumstances that expose them. Fighters who build around repeatable principles can keep adapting even after their original advantages start to fade. Getting that distinction means no longer competing blindly inside a system built for a younger, healthier version of yourself. It means redesigning the system altogether. Careers stall out when athletes ignore that need, clinging to an identity their current body can no longer support. And every failed attempt just deepens the damage. The moment that mental switch flips, new options become visible. An injury that seems to end an MMA run might instead redirect a fighter toward boxing. A promoter unwilling to risk one giant guaranteed purse might agree to split event revenue instead. A fan base dismissing an announcement today might get hooked once the right opponent, stakes, and story come together. That pattern isn't hypothetical. Combat sports show over and over how fast attention can shift. Audiences follow conflict, credibility, and possibility. They don't need the same tired formula forever. McGregor's drawing power still means something, but the plan has to stop treating his name like an endless resource. A name pulls in the first wave of interest. The fight itself has to justify everything after that. That's why seriousness matters so much here. Without real preparation, the event just becomes another exhibition and the whole argument falls apart. With real preparation, an 8-round fight could offer enough genuine uncertainty to hook viewers. The key isn't just getting Mayweather and McGregor to sign paperwork. It's creating conditions where the audience actually believes both men intend to win. That belief is what separates a real sporting event from a nostalgia cash grab. Once those conditions are in place, consistency becomes a powerful force. Every decision starts feeding the same goal. The recovery window protects McGregor's body. The choice of sport limits stress on his injured leg. The shorter format cuts down unnecessary wear. The revenue-sharing model limits the promoter's exposure. Banning exhibition rules keeps the whole thing credible. None of those pieces is flashy by itself, but together they form a coherent plan. The best performers know that dominance usually comes from a stack of disciplined details, not one big dramatic moment. Amateurs look for the single announcement that fixes everything. Professionals solve each problem individually and then connect the pieces. That's the insight most people miss while chasing a miracle. There's no miracle that undoes 6 years of inactivity. There's no miracle that restores a fractured leg to what it was. There's no miracle that snaps championship timing back into place after years away from real competition. Progress will be uncomfortable because it has to be earned through preparation, restraint, repetition, and realistic expectations. Skip those and there's no real development. The same cycle just repeats under worse conditions later. The best performers are the ones who accept that truth before it's forced on them. They understand smart effort isn't easier than hard effort. It's harder because it means turning down choices that feel good but weaken the actual strategy. Details matter because every big collapse starts with something that got dismissed as too small to matter. The wrong month, the wrong weight class, the wrong contract, or the wrong format can wipe out months of work. The right adjustment can save the whole opportunity. So what's the principle that could actually unlock what's left of McGregor's potential? It's not a promise that he beats Mayweather, dominates boxing, or gets back to championship form. It's a method for giving him a real shot instead of setting up another predictable failure. Plenty of people work themselves ragged while repeating choices that guarantee the same outcome. They mistake exhaustion for progress and noise for momentum. The fix is to stop rewarding activity just because it looks intense, and instead focus on the one variable that actually moves the needle on success. For McGregor, that means owning the injury instead of hiding it, owning the inactivity instead of brushing it off, and owning the discipline issues instead of assuming reputation alone can replace preparation. Once those truths become the foundation of the plan, real improvement becomes possible. This pattern has ended plenty of careers because athletes often mistake adapting for weakness. They think switching divisions, opponents, schedules, or sports means giving up. In reality, refusing to adapt is exactly what strips away their power. Once that belief flips, the change can feel almost instant. The physical work still takes time, but the direction becomes clear. Clarity prevents wasted training camps, reckless bookings, and promotional deals built on fantasy. It also keeps the fighter from getting rushed into a matchup designed mainly to cash in on his name. This same idea keeps coming back because it applies at every level. Understand the reality, identify the real limiting factor, build the plan around it, and execute without getting distracted by outside pressure. That sequence is so simple people underestimate it. They assume the answer has to be complicated because the situation feels complicated. But complexity is exactly why the fundamentals matter more, not less. The top performers don't abandon fundamentals when the pressure rises. They lean on them harder. McGregor doesn't need a miracle pill, a manufactured feud, or another claim about being in the best shape of his life. He needs real recovery time, a training environment that rebuilds discipline, a format suited to his body, and financial terms that actually reflect what the event earns. None of that sounds glamorous, but it's the difference between milking the final chapter of a career and building one worth watching. Real improvement only starts once comfort ends. McGregor may need to accept less control, fewer guarantees, a different sport, and expectations below his historic peak. Mayweather may need to accept genuine competitive terms instead of exhibition safety. The promoter may need to bet on upside while capping the downside. The audience may need to reconsider an idea it initially wrote off. Every side has to move past comfort for this event to feel credible. That's where the proposal gets its power. It lines up everyone's incentives instead of leaning purely on hype. When incentives align, discipline becomes easier to track. The fighters earn more if fans actually care. Fans care more when the stakes are real. The promoter commits more confidently when the downside is controlled. The format gets safer without losing meaning. That's where the real value gets created. People love to credit the top 1% to pure mysterious talent. Talent counts, but the ability to organize everything around that talent often matters just as much. McGregor's hands may still be dangerous, but danger without timing, conditioning, and composure isn't reliable. Mayweather's defensive genius may still be intact, but an exhibition wouldn't tell us much about whether either man still has real competitive fire. A genuine 8-round fight puts those questions front and center. It gives both fighters a reason to actually prepare and gives fans real uncertainty worth paying for. That's smarter work, not just more of it. This whole pattern turns destructive when it's ignored. Careers stall, reputations fade, and every comeback draws less belief than the one before it. Once the principle is actually absorbed, though, the same career can be seen through a totally different lens. McGregor stops being a former champion, desperately chasing 2016, and becomes a veteran adapting his remaining strengths to a new set of limits. That version of the story is more honest, and arguably more compelling. Fans have already seen the rise, the wealth, the losses, the injury, and the time away. What's left unanswered is whether he can adapt. Adaptation is the single thread tying everything else together. It turns the leg fracture from an ending into a strategic constraint. It turns boxing from a novelty into a genuine option. It turns revenue sharing from a cheap offer into a real market test. It turns an 8-round cap from a limitation into smart matchmaking. Taken together, the whole proposal stops looking like a desperate comeback attempt and starts to resemble a calculated experiment. That's the difference between chasing attention and controlling the narrative. The amateur move would be announcing the fight immediately, hyping the stakes, promising massive purses, and hoping nostalgia carries the whole thing. The professional move is establishing health benchmarks, confirming real training commitments, negotiating sustainable finances, choosing a sensible date, and building the promotion around genuine uncertainty. Master that process, and the event no longer runs entirely on empty hype. It gains real structure to support the spectacle. Plenty of people miss this because shortcuts feel faster, right up until the shortcut fails. Then the disciplined path becomes the only one left. McGregor's situation is already too fragile for another impulsive move. The discomfort of waiting and adapting beats the permanent cost of another poorly planned comeback. Growth can't happen without that discomfort, because it means admitting the old identity no longer holds up. Once that's accepted, every option on the table can be judged honestly. The outcome might still be a loss. No strategy guarantees a win in this sport. But there's a real difference between losing after a rational, well-prepared attempt and losing because the same old mistakes got repeated. That difference is what separates the amateur approach from the professional one. It's what separates work from progress, promotion from credibility, and nostalgia from an actual comeback. Pay attention to the seemingly small choices, because those are what set the stage for every major moment that follows. That's where the real edge lives, where the opportunity gets protected, and where broken versus broke stops being just a catchy line.